I'm all for honesty in a relationship, telling the one you love about previous relationships, sharing your awkward habits or unusual interests. But on exactly which date do you tell them you're the world's greatest superhero? What if they get upset that you've been lying this entire time? On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss the Superman and Lois episode, A Brief Reminiscence in Between Cataclysmic Events. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. And this is our 5th annual date night episode for Valentine's Day, so of course, I am joined by my lovely wife. She is the Lois to my Superman. Please welcome Bethany Wells.
Yay, if this is our 5th episode, does that make us experts? Because we spend, roughly like 10,000 hours researching each episode. That would make us experts, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
We could say so.
Yeah.
We put it on the internet, so if you put it on the internet, that makes you an expert, right?
Obviously.
If you didn't tune in last week, we decided that unbiased, we decided that Superman and Lois were the best comic book 2 on-screen couple. They've just been portrayed the best. Their story's been portrayed the best. And we think with this episode, at least I did, I presented it to Bethany, that this was an episode that truly showed the relationship between Clark, I'm going to say Clark, and Lois.
Right.
So we will start as spoiler-free as we can, as we usually do. But everybody knows that Clark Kent and Lois Lane have a, long-standing relationship. And this episode just highlights that.
It was a really good representation of their entire relationship, not just like when they first met. It was like when they first met, kind of their dating, when she finds out, all like a lot of their relationship. So
yeah. So that's why we chose this episode. So let's go ahead and get into it. The episode aired on the CW on June 22nd in 2021. This was the 11th episode of the first season of Superman and Lois, and I thought Bethany would be interested in this. The director of the episode is Gregory Smith. Does that name ring a bell?
Oh my gosh, I love him!
Yeah.
Ephraim!
Yes, so Bethany would immediately know him because she has shared that she's a big fan of Everwood.
Oh my gosh,
and of course,
had such a crush on him when I was in middle school.
So he was the director of this episode.
That's why I loved it so much.
He, of course, has done a lot of things with CW. He's directed episodes of The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow. He's directed episodes of Riverdale. So Superman and Lois is not the only thing he's done.
But most importantly, he was Ephraim Brown on Everwood.
There you go. So I thought Bethany would enjoy that little piece of trivia about this episode.
You held that card really close to your chest.
I did, because I knew that before we watched the episode, and I was wondering if you would notice his name when it came across the screen, but you did not.
I didn't.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the comic book connections as it goes to this episode of Superman and Lois.
This is the comic book connection theme.
This episode is a tribute to the iconic love story of Clark Kent and Lois Lane, and echoes classic moments from Superman Birthright by Mark Waid and Superman for All Seasons by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, both of which explore Clark's early days and his growing bond with Lois Lane. The way Clark reveals his identity to Lois in this episode mirrors many iconic comic book moments where honesty and trust define their relationship, such as Action Comics number 662 from 1991, where he voluntarily shares his secret with Lois before their marriage. Additionally, the sequence of Clark's first public appearance as Superman pays homage to the character's introduction in Action Comics number 1 way back in 1938, reinforcing the timeless nature of his mythology while integrating it into the show's modern, grounded storytelling. So, just overall impression, without giving too much away, what was your take on this episode?
I really enjoyed watching. we're not spoiling anything. I enjoyed watching how the relationship started, just kind of getting to watch them truly fall in love with each other, and just the mutual respect that they have for each other right from the beginning.
Yeah.
It was just very sweet, and it's not a show that I have watched a lot of episodes of. And so even just seeing this, you get such a good glimpse into what their relationship is. And considering the show is called Superman and Lois, that's got to be a pretty powerful, spine to the show.
Yeah, and at the same time, the episode's not entirely just about them.
No.
It really tells Clark's story.
Right.
Because it opens up with a young Clark discovering the Fortress of Solitude,
Right.
and him, I guess we are to assume, learning his powers, and of course meeting Jor-El for the first time,
Right.
which is very reminiscent of the Superman 78.
Right.
Because that is more what they follow with Jonathan Kent's passing, and then it shows him after he has chosen to be Superman,
Right.
coming back home and talking to his mom, Martha, and then finally again becoming Superman.
Right.
So let's go ahead and jump into the cast and talk about theirs. I didn't want to get into any of the characters because there's a character I won't even reveal it, but there is a character that appears towards the end of this episode that is a continuation of where the show was headed at this time. But this show kind of separates from the season for I'd say about 75% of it, and then it starts to reconnect. I'm not going to mention that character, but we'll start off with Tyler Hoechlin, who plays Clark Kent, also Superman, of course. He first actually appeared as Superman in the first episode of the second season of Supergirl, which just made fans go crazy because the question was always, will we ever see any of the main three,
Right.
Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman? Would we ever see them in the Arrowverse? And sure enough, we got a Superman. Tyler Hoechlin has said that he never auditioned, but was just offered the role directly.
I can see it. He's got the look, which is a big check mark, but also just his whole vibe. It's very reminiscent of how Christopher Reeve, portrayed Superman, of just he's two different people. And then also he's just like this nice, wholesome boy next door. I enjoy.
He is one of those I've always talked about. I do this with Batman, do it with Superman. Can the actor play both the superhero and the identity? Like, are they a good Batman and a good Bruce Wayne, or are they a better Bruce Wayne than they are Batman? Same thing with Clark. Who can play a good Clark Kent and who can play a good Superman? Christopher Reeve, I still think is the best. Tyler Hoechlin, though, is great.
He does a really good job
at being able to portray both of them as two different characters. Brandon Routh, I think, is pretty much doing Christopher Reeve, but he does a pretty good job. I still stand by, and I will always stand by this, that Henry Cavill was a great Superman, not a great Clark Kent.
No, he wasn't.
So I will stand by that. But were you familiar with Tyler? I don't think we've ever talked about this. Did you ever watch Teen Wolf?
No, I was never a Teen Wolf.
Yeah, so Tyler Hoechlin was on Teen Wolf, the MTV series. I've never watched an episode, so I knew nothing about him until he played Superman. So I was just curious. Didn't know. So if you knew about Tyler Hoechlin before Superman, good for you. Hit me up on social. I mean, I looked into it and all, but I didn't watch it. I haven't watched any episodes, so I don't know what he was like on, and how different that character was.
Right.
Because I'm kind of curious, if he was just offered the role, like what was it they saw,
right,
other than looks, that went, this guy could be our Superman.
Right. I mean, yeah, like you said, other than looks, and looks was a big thing. Like, he looks like
but
Superman.
just because you look like the character doesn't mean you're going to be.
We know.
Yeah. There's been several actors who, they may look like the character, but nope, no. We do not want they should not have ever opened their mouth playing this character. All right, next up we have Bitsy Tulloch as Lois Lane. She has said this was one of her favorite episodes because it captures, quote unquote, the heart of Lois and Clark's love story.
I agree. It's so good. You really, like, I'm sure people who had been watching the series already cared about their relationship, but me coming in as a person who really had no connection to the rest of the story fell for their relationship. Like, you fell in love with their relationship watching this episode.
Oh yeah. No, I do think that other than when it connects back to the main overarching story of season 1, I think this is a really good, like, if you want to get somebody interested in the series, but I would even just say anything Superman related, I think this is a good episode to pick.
Right.
Like, here, watch this episode.
Yeah. I think she does such a great job of, one of the things I really loved, because, I love Margot Kidder, but Margot Kidder fell in love with Superman, and then she fell in love with Clark.
No, Lois Lane. Yeah, Margot Kidder's Lois Lane.
I know. That's what I meant. But, like, she fell in love with Clark and really didn't care anything about Superman. And I really appreciated that about their relationship. It's not his, like, persona that she is in love with. It is who Clark is as a person.
Yeah.
And it leads into why he would trust her to tell her the truth.
Now, she has said, now I called her Bitsy. That is how she's credited sometimes. I do actually think in this show she is credited by her real first name, which is Elizabeth. But she has said that she does base her character off, like, she was heavily influenced by Margot Kidder's portrayal, which I can absolutely see.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I agree with you. I do like that in this show they have Lois fall for Clark, which is more true to the comic. In the comic, she falls in love with Clark than the Margot Kidder version that's in love with Superman. But what do you think about the chemistry between Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tulloch?
Explosive.
Yeah.
Like, that's a flammable chemistry. Like, they are so good together. And just watching them, they were a team. Just watching them play off of each other, the way they communicated, like, you felt like they were the kind of couple who, if they were at a party and just looked at each other, they had an entire conversation without ever speaking words. Like, that's the vibe you get from looking at from how they interact with each other.
No, they are both great with their facial expressions, and they definitely deliver a lot within their eyes. Just complete fact here, like, not saying anything against it, but are you aware that actress that Elizabeth Tulloch is 6 years older than Tyler Hoechlin?
I did not know that.
Does that affect anything?
Not to me.
Okay. Like, does it appear that Lois is possibly older than Clark?
No, I can't tell.
Yeah.
Like, they're I mean, you're 7 years older than me, so.
Yeah. No, I understand. That's why I said I'm not against it. I was just curious, like, does that play a factor in anything?
No, I liked that the two of them, they worked with each other. And it would also make sense, like, she was already an established reporter. And so that meant that she had to have been working there.
Yeah. I can't recall if it's ever
longer.
established that Lois is older than Clark, at least in the show.
Right.
I don't know if it's ever established, so just curious. But of course, they have their twin boys, Jonathan and Jordan Kent, played at the moment by Jordan Elsis and Alex Garfin. Of course, one of those actors would change later in the series, but at the time being, these were your two twin boys of Lois and Clark. You didn't see a lot of them in this episode, but what were your thoughts on their sons? Or since you are kind of new to this episode, to the series, what are your thoughts on them having twin sons?
I mean,
one of which is revealed has superpowers, the other one does not.
I did watch, like, the first couple episodes of the series, and then you were like, no, I'm gonna watch this, and can't, like, Laramie and I can't just sit and watch shows together. Like, if we want to watch a show together, it takes a very long time. And Laramie's like, no, I'm going to get spoiled on stuff, so I'm just going to go watch this, and that's fine. So I did watch the first few episodes, and it's such an interesting look. Like, yes, you have two kids, and they're even twins.
Yes.
And they are so different. And you've got the one who's very Clark Kent-ish, of just like wholesome boy next door, seems to be, the all-American teen that you would think of. And then the other's just a little different. And
Well, I think it's actually kind of the other way, because Jonathan's the one that's the jock. He plays the sports and all that. And then Jordan is the nerdy one.
Yeah.
That's
what I was saying.
Oh, I thought you were saying that one was both the Clark Kent-like and the boy next door.
Yeah, they are. Like,
okay.
Clark Kent's kind of the boy next door. And then you've got, I don't know, they never really talk, or at least I've never really seen things about Lois growing up and how she was as a teen. But I could imagine her being a little, off the beaten path, kind of. She's fine.
You think she would have been more of an outcast?
I think so, just because Clark was so invested in trying to fit in, whereas she was fine with sticking out.
So you don't think Lois would have been like a popular girl?
I don't know, maybe, but I kind of more think she would have been the kid. She would have been focused on her studies. She would have been like inquisitive and just, and then, teens don't always appreciate somebody who's a little different. So I don't know. I like to think that she was a little different. Maybe outcast is a strong word, but just not, all-American teen princess.
All right. Well, before we get more into talking about it, let's actually do two different things. So first, we'll do our typical watch it or read it. So should someone who's never seen this, should they watch it, or do you think that they could get a better understanding of Lois and Clark's relationship by reading about it?
I think this does a really good job of of giving you almost like the spark notes of their relationship.
Yeah.
So like if you had no idea about anything Superman, Lois Lane related, you could watch this episode, get a really good idea of what their relationship is, as well as who Superman is, without investing a huge ton of time. And I think it's interesting enough to where if you were interested in it, it would make you want to consume more. And so I would say watch it first, and then, because there's so much Superman and Lois.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're talking about their relationship in a way started in 1938, because she's in the first issue, and, their relationship, whether it be with Lois and Superman or Clark and Lois, whatever it may be, would go up and down and all around. I mean, she would even get her own comic for a while called, Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane.
Great.
So
yeah, that's why I say watch this, and then if you're interested, then you can go read things.
Yeah, I said that earlier about, this being a great jumping off point for just getting anyone into this. I totally 100% agree with what Bethany said. Yeah, this is a great, just, hey, you just want to know everything you need to know right here, right now. Here you go.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to do. So since this is our Valentine date night episode, I will ask now this question. Without giving anything away, is this a good date night? Was this a good date night episode?
I think the first 3/4 of it for sure are a really good date night. And then once it starts to go back into the overall story
for season 1,
it starts to kind of lose appeal, at least for me.
Yeah, because if you don't know what's going on,
you're confused. But yeah, I would say especially the beginning for sure. If yes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Hey, it's Nicole Byer here. Let me ask you something. Are you tired of endless swiping on dating apps? Fed up with awkward first dates and disappointing hookups? Girl, same. Welcome to Why Won't You Date Me, the podcast where I figure out love and how to suck less at dating. Each week, I get real with comedians, friends, and celebrities about their love lives. We swap dating horror stories, awkward hookups, and dive into the messy and wonderful world of relationships. I've chatted with amazing guests like Conan O'Brien, Whitney Cummings, Sarah Silverman, Trixie Mattel, Tiffany Haddish, and so many more. So whether you're single, mingling, or booed up, there's something in it for everyone. Tune into Why Won't You Date Me with me, Nicole Byer, and discover insights that might just save you from your next dating disaster. Listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And catch full video episodes on YouTube. New episodes drop every Friday.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into talking about this show. And it has just hit me that I did not ask Bethany to think up a quote. So when we usually start with our speech bubble, our special quote, is there anything you think, like even if you're paraphrasing it, is there anything from this episode that as a quote you would say?
I would say one of the things I really liked, the moment that was kind of, it just like warmed my heart so much, was when Lois and Lois and Superman were interviewing for the first time. And she steps off to like work on her mic and she's talking, and the woman asks, like, he's totally flirting with you. And she says, I'm in love with someone else.
Yeah.
Clark, the guy that I'm dating. And you see him react to it.
Yeah.
And just it's a very sweet moment because he's heard his girlfriend for the first time say that she loves him.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know, but then it turns into this like, oh, now this is serious.
Yeah.
I need to figure out how to move forward.
Well, I also like the friend realizes that he's listening. She's
Yeah.
like, wait, isn't one of his superpowers super hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love kind of the moments. Mine was, of course, when he does reveal his secret. And he says to her, I kept my secret from everyone for so long, and now I know why. It was for you, so we could have this life together.
That's so sweet.
It's a great quote.
Because I also loved, they didn't really show like what her reaction was to getting the secret or finding out that he was Superman. But it does seem like a reasonable thing of like, you wouldn't want to tell somebody on a first date, like, by the way, I'm a superhero.
No, not on the first date. Absolutely not. You don't know where it's going to go, and now you've just revealed your identity.
Right. So
could you imagine it's on your Tinder profile? Like,
yeah.
Oh, and by the way, also, I'm Superman.
By the way, just but shh. So question: if you were
what are your
to
likes?
have
Truth, justice,
the American way.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
dislikes, Kryptonite, Lex Luthor.
Hobbies, saving the world.
Yeah.
If you were a superhero, at what point in a relationship would you think it be appropriate to tell your partner?
I think it would have to be just like this show does and like they did in the comics, where it's after she has agreed to marry you, but before the wedding.
Right.
Like, I think that's just one of those, okay, now I need to let you know about this. Because you don't want to do it after you're married.
No.
I don't think. Because I think that's just too much of,
it's almost like you tricked them into the relationship.
Kind of, in a way. But I mean, again, she is agreeing to marry Clark.
Right.
So it's kind of an added bonus.
But it's a package deal.
But yeah.
But like.
But you don't want to do it so early or so. You want to make sure that it is a relationship that is going to last.
So I feel like the sweet spot, because I don't disagree with you, it should be before the wedding, but I also think it should be before the proposal. It should be in that sweet spot before a proposal where you've both like pretty much decided we're going to propose. Now we're just waiting for the moment. Yeah. Before you have the moment, you need to have the conversation that you have superpowers.
Which it was in this show. If you remember, he proposes as Superman at the Fortress of Solitude.
That's right. Yeah.
So he does tell her. In fact, I think we're to assume he tells her in the same visit as when he takes her to Smallville for the first time.
Yeah.
And gets to meet Martha because he does it, out on the cornfield.
Right.
No, and that is jumping ahead a little bit because I even had this question in my weird science. Is exactly when does that actually become a thing that you go, all right, I think now's the time. And if she ends up rejecting me, I've just revealed the biggest secret of my life.
But also you have to feel like she wouldn't be rejecting him and then saying like, and I'm going to use this story forever. Like, he's realized she is a person he can trust.
And that's what I'm saying. I think you would have to, you'd have
Yeah.
to know that, which is why I like that quote so much. You know,
Yeah.
I kept this secret for so long. I now know why. It was for you.
But like, that's why I also feel like it should be before the proposal, because that's a huge thing to take on. And I feel like deciding to marry somebody whose job is to save the world is a huge undertaking. Like, you are signing on for a lot of unknowns, for a lot of danger in your life. And I feel like it would be a reasonable thing for a person to say, like, that is too much for me. I love you. I respect you. Your secret is safe with me, but I cannot live my life like that.
What goes through her head, though, when that reveal happens? But I mean, you got to think about all those times when they are together and then something happens and Clark disappears.
Yeah.
Or you got to think even at times where she may have felt that Clark was abandoning her.
Right.
And then Superman shows up, saves the day.
No, I think my first thought would have been that moment where she knows that he heard her say, I love Clark. And it was him. And he knew. So he's known. Like, there were moments where he knew things.
Is there a time frame of anger? Like, do you think Lois actually is upset about it for a while? Or do you think she just immediately accepts it? The show makes it imply she immediately accepts it. But in reality,
if I were Lois Lane, I feel like there would be a period of, I need to digest this. And depending on her emotions around it and what is all going through her head, that could come across as anger, maybe not towards him, but just at the whole situation. And so I feel like there may be some frustration and, like I said, some shock for sure. But also, I feel like that's a reasonable reaction, though.
No, I agree. No, I do agree. And I think and again, I think that supports what you're saying about it even happening before the proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is that, I got to see how she's going to react to this.
Mm-hmm.
Because if she does not take this well, then I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Right.
And if she does take it well, then let's
this is it.
Let's keep going.
Person,
let's keep going. And you know what? We never know. Maybe he has the ability like Christopher Reeve did in Superman 2.
To
and
go.
No. To kiss her.
Oh,
and make her forget everything.
Kiss her so good she forgets.
Yeah.
But then he would have to break up with her. Like, he couldn't say,
for just the moral aspect of it. Yeah.
He couldn't say like, "Oh, you didn't like that? Well, let me kiss you
and
so
we'll
that
just
you
keep
forget."
Being
and we'll
Clark
just keep
and Lois.
Yeah. No, he would have to then break up with her.
Yeah. And it's the lonely life of a superhero, as other stories have told before. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into some moving panels. I only listed a bunch of references because this episode, I think, was not only a tribute to the relationship of Lois and Clark, I think it was just a tribute to Superman in general. So just like in Superman 78, we see him leave home right after the death of Jonathan, and he doesn't return until he becomes Superman, which you even commented on.
Like, he looks like he was 12.
Yeah.
And that's a long... And then he comes back and he's 30. Yeah. Like, I feel like Martha...
And Martha's just like, oh, how did everything go?
I feel like the
You've
town
been gone
would be
for
like,
a decade.
The town would have had her arrested. They would have been like, where's Clark?
Yeah.
Show us the body.
Yeah. Because he would have still been like in high school.
Yeah.
Based off of all this. Yeah. And then, of course, then he goes to find out that Lana is, his girlfriend.
Well, it's been 17 years.
Yeah. Is now engaged to be married. So, yeah. And then, of course, we also get, as I mentioned in the comic book connections, we get the Action Comics #1 cover shot of him lowering the green car. Of course, in this, it's to rescue it, whereas in the cover of Action Comics #1, it's stopping it because it's got some bad guys in it. At that same moment, we also get a look at the first suit, which is very reminiscent of the classic, not only in the classic comics, but more so, I would say, in the Fleischer cartoons of the 40s, because that black emblem really stands out.
And that is the cutest moment where the kid goes like, "Nice suit." It's like, "Thanks, my mom made it."
Yeah, just so innocent and childlike, 30-year-old man. Or 20-something-year-old man, I guess we're too.
I don't know.
To guess.
It's not clear.
Yeah. Then we do see him running into the alley right before all this and ripping the shirt off, a la Christopher Reeve in Superman 78. I mean, it's almost exact the way he does it and all. But then when he returns, because we see him run by the phone booth, and Bethany actually commented, she was like, "Oh, we're going to see him go into the phone booth," and then he runs right past it. But we do see him change back into Clark by flying into the phone booth, spinning around real fast, and he comes out as Clark Kent. So we get that. The villain of these flashback little shots is known by Atom Man, who was actually first mentioned in the Adventures of Superman radio show back in the 40s. And, if you didn't know this, was the name given to Lex Luthor in a 1950 film serial, which starred the original actor of Superman, Kirk Allen.
I loved watching the two of them like solve this crime together, and just it was a very powerful, I feel like, unfortunately, like a very timely villain, because he's basically a white supremacist.
Yes.
And he's damaging homes of minority, or like businesses of minorities, and trying to scare them out of the community. And just kind of the idea that is what Superman stands for, is not that. It's to support, all Americans, all people here. It was really fun to watch that.
Yeah. But then also showing, Clark and Lois like working together and becoming a team, and kind of how that relationship was able to build.
Yes.
But yeah, we even get some little references. We have Lois calling Clark Smallville at one point, which of course she's done throughout the comics and through other iterations. We've got a nice little reference to Clark saying he's going to go home and watch Seinfeld. For those of you who don't know, Jerry Seinfeld, huge Superman fan. So I thought that was a fun little nod. We even have one moment where Superman is listening to like everything and then hones in, which we saw Brandon Routh do in Superman Returns, which I still think is one of the best moments of that movie. So yeah, a lot of references to movies and TV shows and the comics and all that. So again, this is just a great episode to just introduce someone to Superman. And like, Bethany said, not only is it the relationship between Superman and Lois, but it shows you Superman. It shows you how Clark decides to be Superman and what he stands for, like you said earlier. All right, so I do have a couple of weird science things to talk about. And the first is the confrontation with Atom Man, who's got this flamethrower. Yeah. And Lois stands up to him, as Lois does. But of course, Lois is powerless.
She's very flammable also.
And so he goes to launch his flamethrower directly at her, and luckily Superman steps in and stands there. And I just immediately went, that's not how fire works.
Maybe Superman absorbs the flames.
No, we see it go past him, and the way fire would work is it would come back.
But maybe it's like, ooh, yummy Superman, and it just wants to be absorbed.
No, I'm just saying. Lois would have gotten burned. It would have made better sense if he had moved her out of the way. Yeah. But and I get the standing in front of her is, the heroic, I am saving you, and not just, here, let me get you. You're in the way of danger. Let me remove you from this. Like, I think it was more of, you've stood your ground, but now, I need to prevent this horrible thing from happening to you. I think there's a dynamic there.
I think it was a very interesting aesthetic, thing to look at. But yeah, if you thought about it too hard, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No. The other thing is when Atom Man then throws a couple of grenades in two different directions.
Yeah, no, I'll give you this one. This one doesn't make sense.
Yeah. He throws two grenades in two different directions, pretty much telling Superman, you can't save everybody, and gives Superman a choice. Well, Superman is, of course, able to save both, But the first one is by shooting his heat vision at the grenade, and it just goes poof.
That's not how that works.
I'm pretty sure I've never dealt with a grenade. I've never handled a grenade. I'm not a
pretty
weapons
sure
expert.
If you were to like explode a grenade, it would explode.
Yeah,
still.
it would still explode. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, if you were to laser a grenade, that wouldn't have stopped anything. But yeah, nope. There's no. It just poofs. It just disintegrates.
Yeah. It almost looks like a prop that just like got exploded.
Yeah. And then the other grenade is so powerful that even when Superman catches it and it explodes, it blows him back into the shop window that's behind him. So those were really strong grenades to even blow back Superman.
Right.
But yet laser vision, poof, it's gone. So I had a big problem with
the other one was a dud and he could see with his laser vision.
Or X-ray vision. Yeah.
That it was that one wasn't an issue. He was just gonna explode it because he didn't want to break the glass on the store.
Yeah, but then he completely shattered.
But the other store, he was like, "Well, better break glass than explode everybody."
Yeah. Anyway, little things, but my other one comes back to the relationship. So I'm gonna go back to the scene that you're talking about, where Lois is interviewing Superman. And then she's walking to the side. She tells the assistant, whoever she's supposed to be, obviously a friend of Lois's, I'm in love with Clark Kent. Great moment. How deep is her love for Clark Kent, though, that she is sitting 2 feet from Superman and doesn't recognize? I know people always joke about this.
That is the tale as old as 1938. Larry.
My question is not just about in general Superman and Clark Kent, because the whole idea behind Clark Kent is that he's supposed to be kind of unnoticing. Like you're not supposed to pay attention to him.
She doesn't notice him. So
anybody is not supposed to really notice Clark. Like that's the whole idea behind the persona. But they've spent so much time together and she is in love with him.
Yeah.
How is she not looking at the man she loves and not realize they are the same person?
Do you think he's never taken his glasses off with her? Is that the problem?
Clearly not. I mean, clearly not. He's never taken his glasses. They've never been intimate.
They've never been intimate. And so he just...
Which I'm fine with. Because again, he's good old, American boy. Jonathan and Martha raised him as such.
Uh-huh.
But still,
yeah.
If she's confessing her love for Clark, she has stared at Clark lovingly. Yeah. She's looked even through the glasses. She's looked into his eyes.
They've done a little kissy kiss.
You would assume. So how is she looking at Superman sitting 2 feet from her and does not realize it's Clark? That is where I'm always for Superman, Clark. How does no one know it's him? I will defend that. I can't defend that she's in love with Clark and doesn't recognize
Tyler Hoechlin doesn't even really change his hair part either.
No, he doesn't change a lot. Yeah, he doesn't change an awful lot.
It's the glasses and the outfit.
Yeah.
Do you think Clark Kent just never wears that combination of colors? Is that possible?
No.
No.
Because he's worn it even in this show. He likes red plaid, so
that's something you two have in common.
Yeah. No, mine's blue.
Oh, my bad.
He likes red. So overall, let's just talk about the love story.
Yeah.
Between Lois and Clark. You've kind of hinted at it from time throughout the episode. Like, what do you still think? I'll just ask this: do you still think that we made the right decision? That Superman and Lois are probably the best comic book to on-screen couple?
Yes, I'm gonna say yes because
entirely based off of this episode of Superman and Lois.
Yes, based off this episode especially, because you see them work together as a team. Like, you get the impression almost that the influence and the power that Lois has as a reporter and how she can investigate things is just as powerful as when Superman goes out and stands in front of a fire torch blower.
A flamethrower.
Flamethrower, thank you. And so she affects just as much change. She is just as much there by his side as he is by her side.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is again an amazing episode that really shows their relationship. And as we've said, Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tulloch do a fantastic job
Oh yeah. I
portraying
got
them.
choked up. Like during their honeymoon scene where they're just kind of like laying in bed and like talking to each other. Like it's just such a precious like moment together, and it's so sweet and loving. It choked me up. Like it was I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're kind of revealing a little bit, so let's get into our final decision. So when it comes to the 11th episode of season 1, which has such a weird title for the type of episode as it is, A Brief Reminiscence in Between Cataclysmic Events.
It's a very accurate title.
Which you don't really get unless you realize what the episode was before. And then, of course, at the end of this episode, you get to see where it's going. But yeah, it's just these flashbacks. But when it comes to that episode, do you bag it, stack it, or trade it? Bethany, what say you?
Can I just bag the first like 3/4 of the episode where it is the flashback? And like once it starts getting back into the main story, I'm kind of, like I said, I'm uninterested. Although it does still show like the power of their relationship with each other.
Yes, because the main villain, the whole idea behind this episode was the main villain is learning about Superman because he knows Superman, and he's learning about Superman's life so that he knows how to get to him. And so he learns about Lois and their sons and family. And so he knows, hey, if I go after them,
Superman will do whatever I want.
Superman will do whatever I ask, and will bow before me, in essence. And so we do see that at the end of where the bad guy goes and pretty much threatens Lois and Jonathan and Jordan. Jordan, of course, using his abilities, try to stand up to the bad guy. He doesn't know his powers all that well, and so he's taken out very quickly. And then, of course, Superman comes, who is weakened from what had happened in the episode before. Like I said, trying not to get into too much of this and just focus on this one episode. But Superman is weakened, and so he does end up having to pretty much say, I'll agree to do what you want.
Right.
And so we do get kind of an outcome of why did we spend 30 minutes of this episode in flashbacks going through the life of Clark Kent and into Lois Lane.
But then also to jump off of that, after Superman has agreed to follow whatever that guy has decided he wants him to do, Lois doesn't just stand there in a puddle of tears. She takes action. She starts making steps towards trying to help him.
Yes.
And so it goes back into that, like, they are not Superman doing his own thing, Lois doing her own thing. They are a team.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I'm going to bag it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't, if this is the only episode you've seen, you don't realize that she is calling John Henry Irons Steel. She's calling him because she just says, John, it's happening. But because, like I said, that goes into the overall storyline from the show. But I agree with you. I'd say a bag it as well, just because this is one of the best episodes of the series. The series would go on for another 3 years, 4 seasons total. But I think this is one of the best episodes because of what it does, because it establishing that. And I think it was great to do it about, in the middle of season 1.
Right.
Because we'll get you into the show. Okay, now let's really hook you with this episode that that this is about the life of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, Superman beating the bad guy from here and there, but this is about the life that Superman / Clark Kent is living. So I totally agree with that as well. Let's move into recommendations. I know, again, I didn't prep you for this. We were focused on the Valentine's date night stuff. I wasn't thinking about reminding you of all the different segments of the show.
Yeah.
But is there something, because I know you're familiar with other, especially like TV shows and movies.
Mm-hmm.
So is there something else that you think that people should, I'll just say watch, because you haven't read an awful lot of Superman comics. So is there something else you think they should watch that would go along well with this episode of Superman and Lois?
I mean, this is a long form watch that I'm recommending, but Smallville was a great series. It's very powerful to get to watch like Clark become who he will become. I think, Lois Lane isn't introduced into Smallville until season 4. And it's what, a 10, 11?
It's 10 seasons.
It's a 10 season. Yeah, it's 10 season show. But she's there, but you get his backstory. And so all of those like moments, those iconic moments, when they hit harder because you see the journey that it took to get to those moments. And Smallville just does a really good job of telling that story.
I agree. We even contemplated doing an episode of Smallville once we Bethany actually had an idea of doing like an episode of Smallville, doing an episode of Lois and Clark, and doing an episode of Superman and Lois, and having this be a 3 episode episode of the podcast. And then I sat down trying to find those episodes. I was like, okay. And I started it in order. Like, what episode of Lois and Clark do we watch? Well, it was probably best to watch the wedding episode because that was a big moment in not only the series, but also in comic books because they paralleled them. They held off on the wedding of Superman and Clark in the comics because they wanted it to match up with them getting together on the show. Then Smallville, we could have gone with Lois's introduction. We could have gone into another episode where their relationship finally starts to kick off. But then I looked into this one and I immediately found this episode and I was like, nah, we don't need to do anything else. Let's do this one. So but no, I do agree. I think finding some of those other stuff, I would throw out, Bethany talked about Smallville. I'd throw out, the Lois and Clark from the 90s, especially again, look for that wedding episode. But I particularly like to go to a comic, especially like a limited series that you could read. And I went with the Superman, Lois and Clark series from 2015. This happens right along the tail end of the New 52 storyline. It was written by Dan Jurgens and Lee Weeks. And it focuses on an older Clark. He's got a beard in the series. And Lois. And they have their son, Jonathan. Because they don't have twins in the comics. They just have Jonathan. And Jonathan does develop the superpowers of his dad. But it focuses on them being, a family. And them being, Lois and Clark being a strong, supportive couple. And it focuses, especially in this series, because they've come to in the multiverse, in the DC multiverse, they've come to a different world in which there was another Superman. He has since died. And so Clark realizes he now has to step up and be the Superman of this universe, but he can't reveal himself. So we've got this balance that Clark has to have of being the Superman that this world needs now that they no longer have their Superman, but also being Jonathan's father and being Lois's husband, because they came to this multiverse for them to be a family. But it also, at the same time, it shows Lois being supportive of him and maintaining her career. Just a little tidbit. They actually, when they get to this Earth, they choose to use the last name White in honor of Perry.
Oh, cute.
So she continues to pursue her career as a reporter, but keeping her identity, but also, again, keeping secret and all that, because they're living in a world in which there is already a Clark Kent and a Lois Lane. But I think that's a great series. I can't remember how many issues it is. It ran, I think, about a year. So 9, 12 issues, perhaps. But I would look into that as a good, good story of the relationship between Clark and Lois. And again, that's the name of the series. It's called Lois and Clark. So it's a really good one. But we'll go ahead and wrap things up here with our date night Valentine's episode. Valentine's Day coming up. at the end of this week. So if you just want to sit back and relax, maybe you've gone out for a nice meal. Maybe you've gone to actually, you went out and watched a movie, or you went out and watched a show. You went to, a concert or something.
Went dancing.
Yeah, that's great. But then you're winding down for the day. This is a 43-minute episode.
Yeah.
It's one episode from a season. Maybe you could watch it and enjoy it for your date night. But we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you, Bethany, for joining me on this as always, and look forward to year 6 next year.
Well, it'll just depend. Are you going to ever ask me to be your Valentine this year?
I mean, always.
Oh.
Every day. It doesn't have to be Valentine's Day.
Oh,
I will always ask you to be mine.
Oh.
Because I choose you.
What?
That's an old Simpsons reference that I just pulled out. And that was for you.
Thanks,
Enjoy
babe.
that.
Love you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Rate and review the show. Check out movingpanelspodcast.com, our new website. We're still working on building it, but check it out. Tell us what you think. Follow us on social media. Before today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramie Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Moving panels, sails collide. Ships and seas, where worlds divide. From print to screen, the legends stand. Comic kings with the upper hand.